Hey guys, tonight we're stepping back in time, all the way to Imperial China, a world of unimaginable opulence, intricate rituals, and, well, some truly horrifying realities. Imagine yourself as a young boy, perhaps just a child, standing on the precipice of a decision that will define your entire existence. You're not picking out your favorite toy or deciding what to eat for dinner. You're contemplating a path that promises status and proximity to power, but at an unspeakable cost. Your family, perhaps impoverished or ambitious, sees this as your only chance, a golden ticket out of destitution, a way to elevate their standing. You might be told stories of the grand forbidden city, of silk robes and endless feasts, of whispered secrets in the emperor's ear. But beneath the glittering facade lies a truth so brutal, so utterly dehumanizing, that you'd likely not survive it, not in your wildest dreams. So before you get comfortable, take a moment to like the video and subscribe, but only if you genuinely enjoy what I do here. And let me know where you're listening from tonight and what time it is for you. Now, dim the lights, maybe turn on a fan for that soft background hum, and let's ease into tonight's journey together. You stand there, a child perhaps no older than 8 or 9, perhaps even younger, the weight of your family's hopes pressing down on your small shoulders. The air is thick with the scent of damp earth and the distant murmur of village life, a stark contrast to the whispered legends of the Forbidden City. This isn't a fairy tale, this is a grim negotiation with destiny. The choice, if it can even be called that, is laid bare before you continue a life of back-breaking labor and perpetual hunger in the fields, or embark on a journey that promises a degree of comfort, even power, but demands an irreversible sacrifice. Your parents, their faces etched with the lines of hardship, look at you with a mixture of desperation and something akin to a fragile hope. They speak of a better life, not just for you, but for the entire family. A life where they might no longer starve, where they might have a roof that doesn't leak, where they might escape the clutches of the tax collector. You hear stories of eunuchs returning to their home villages, not as broken men, but as figures of immense influence. They wear fine silks, their pockets jingle with silver, and they command respect, even fear. They build ancestral temples, buy land, and ensure their families never want for anything again. This, your parents argue, is your chance to be that man, to be the one who saves them all. You might not fully grasp the implications of what they are asking, not in the visceral, terrifying way an adult would, but you understand the concept of hunger, of cold, of the aching weariness that settles in your small bones at the end of each day. You understand the relief that a bowl of warm rice brings, the comfort of a dry straw mat. And the palace, they say, has endless bowls of rice and soft beds and warmth. The decision isn't entirely yours, of course, for many. It was an economic imperative, a desperate measure taken by families on the brink of ruin. The concept of selling a child into servitude, though heartbreaking to our modern sensibilities, was a grim reality in a society where survival often trumped individual well-being. But even within that context, there was a psychological preparation, a narrative woven around the child to make the unthinkable seem not only tolerable but desirable. You're told you are special, chosen, destined for greatness. You will serve the Son of Heaven himself, a living God on earth. This isn't just a job, it's a sacred duty. The procedure itself, known euphemistically as a purification or self-completion, was a clandestine and terrifying affair, often performed by specialists in grim back-alley establishments or even in the humble homes of the desperate. This wasn't a sterile hospital setting. Imagine a dimly lit room, the air thick with the smell of herbs and fear. You're held down, perhaps by your own family, their faces a mask of grim determination. The blade master, or knife man, arrives. His tools laid out a sharp, curved knife, perhaps an herbal concoction to dull the pain, a feather to tickle your nose and encourage urination, and a hollow reed or plug to be inserted after the procedure to prevent the urethral passage from closing. The agony, though perhaps dulled by opium or other traditional anesthetics, would have been immense, a searing pain that ripped through your small body, leaving a trauma that would linger for a lifetime. Survival was far from guaranteed. Infection was rampant, and many boys died from blood loss or sepsis in the days and weeks following the operation. You might lie there, feverish and weak, listening to the whispered prayers of your family, their hope mixed with agonizing uncertainty. If you survived the initial ordeal, you then faced a long, agonizing recovery period. You'd be confined to bed, unable to move, the pain a constant companion. Your wounds would need careful tending, a delicate balance of traditional medicines and the ever-present threat of disease. The success rate was low, perhaps as low as 1 in 3 or even 1 in 5, depending on the era and the skill of the practitioner. For those who didn't make it, their families had not only endured the psychological torment, but also lost a potential source of future support, leaving them even more destitute than before. But let's assume, for the sake of our story tonight, that you are one of the fortunate, or perhaps unfortunate, few who survive. You heal slowly, painfully, your body forever altered. The physical transformation is undeniable, a constant, stark reminder of the path you've chosen, or had chosen for you. But the psychological impact is perhaps even more profound. You are no longer fully male, nor are you female. You occupy a liminal space, an in-between that will define your identity, your interactions, and your place in the rigid social hierarchy of Imperial China. This ambiguous status, while granting you access to parts of the palace forbidden to other men, also marks you as an outsider, an anomaly. You begin to understand, albeit vaguely, the power dynamics at play. Your future is now inextricably linked to the whims of the imperial court. You are a tool, a servant, an extension of the emperor's will. Your personal desires, your individuality, are to be subsumed into this new role. You learn to suppress emotions, to cultivate an outward demeanor of subservience and obedience. This early conditioning, this forced adaptation to a life devoid of personal agency, shapes you in profound ways. You become acutely aware of your surroundings, of the subtle shifts in mood of those around you, of the unspoken rules that govern the imperial household. Your survival depends on this heightened sense of perception, on your ability to anticipate needs and avoid pitfalls. One peculiar historical detail often overlooked is the practice of preserving the severed part, often kept in a sealed jar or box. This was not merely for morbid curiosity, it was a deeply practical and spiritual consideration. Eunuchs believed that for their souls to be complete in the afterlife, they needed to be whole. Therefore, the precious treasure, as it was sometimes called, was carefully guarded, a tangible link to their lost masculinity, to be reunited with their body upon death. This practice speaks volumes about the psychological burden carried by these men, their desperate need for wholeness, even in the face of an irreversible physical alteration. It highlights a common historical debate whether eunuchs viewed their sacrifice as a means to an end for survival and power, or if there was a deeper spiritual reconciliation with their altered state. Historians still debate whether this act of preservation was a genuine belief in an afterlife reunification, or merely a symbolic gesture to maintain a sense of identity in a world that sought to strip them of it. Your journey, however, has only just begun. The initial trauma fades, replaced by a dull ache, a phantom limb sensation in your very being. You are now ready to enter the most exclusive, most dangerous, and most fascinating world in all of China, the Imperial Palace. You've survived the unspeakable, the initial brutal transformation that marked you as a palace eunuch. Now your small, scarred body is being transported. You travel not in luxury, but as cargo, a nameless face among a group of other boys, all sharing the same silent, profound loss. The journey to the capital, to the very heart of the empire, is long and arduous. You might be packed into a creaking cart, jostling along dusty roads, or perhaps herded onto a barge navigating the labyrinthine canals. The outside world, with its bustling markets and endless fields, fades into a blur. Your focus narrows, consumed by the anticipation, the fear, and the sheer alienness of your destination. And then you arrive. The first sight of the Forbidden City is an assault on your young senses. It's not just a city, it's a world within a world. A sprawling, colossal enigma of red walls and golden roofs, shimmering under the vast Chinese sky. Imagine endless courtyards paved with gleaming white marble, so vast they seem to stretch to the horizon. Gates, impossibly tall and ornately carved, stand sentinel, each one a barrier between the mundane world and the divine. The sheer scale is overwhelming, dwarfing everything you've ever known. The air itself seems different here, thick with the scent of incense, polished wood, and something indefinable, something that speaks of ancient power and untold secrets. This is the Purple Forbidden City, a name that evokes its celestial purpose. It's believed to be the earthly counterpart to the purple star Polaris, the center of the heavens, where the Jade Emperor resided. And now you, a mere speck, are about to enter this sacred, forbidden space, the very nexus of power and authority in the Middle Kingdom. You pass through the Meridian Gate, a monumental structure with 5 arched gateways, usually reserved for the Emperor himself. Perhaps you catch a glimpse of the vast outer court, where imperial ceremonies and grand audiences are held. The silence is profound, broken only by the rhythmic scuff of your straw sandals on the smooth stone, or the distant melodic chime of bells from a forgotten pavilion. As you delve deeper, the sounds change. The clatter of everyday life is replaced by hushed whispers, the rustle of silk robes, the soft footsteps of countless servants. You see palace guards, their armor gleaming, standing motionless like statues. Elaborate dragon motifs adorn every surface, from painted eaves to carved pillars, symbolizing the emperor's divine authority. The vibrant colors imperial yellow, vermilion red, deep green, and brilliant gold are everywhere, a feast for eyes accustomed to the muted tones of a peasant village. This opulence, however, is not for you to enjoy in the same way the emperor does. For you, it's a constant backdrop, a reminder of the immense chasm between your status and that of your imperial masters. Your first days, perhaps weeks, are a blur of orientation and overwhelming sensory input. You are part of a new cohort, a group of newly castrated boys, all equally bewildered and terrified. You are assigned to one of the eunuch departments, of which there were many, each with a specific function. Perhaps you're designated for the Directorate of Palace Servants, a vast umbrella organization that managed daily life, or perhaps you're earmarked for the Directorate of Foodstuffs, where you'd be involved in the preparation and serving of the imperial meals. A surprisingly high-stakes job, given the constant fear of poison. The initial training is rigorous, designed to break down your old identity and mold you into a disciplined, obedient servant. You learn the intricate etiquette of the palace, the endless rules of decorum, the precise ways to bow, to speak, to move. Every gesture, every word, every look is scrutinized. You are taught to be invisible, to anticipate needs without being asked, to carry out orders without hesitation. Obedience is paramount. Disobedience, even inadvertent, can lead to severe punishment, from a public flogging to immediate expulsion, or even death. You learn quickly that life here is cheap, and your survival depends on adhering strictly to the unspoken rules. You are introduced to the hierarchy of the eunuchs, a complex system that dictates your place and your future. At the very bottom are the young, newly castrated boys, known as Xiao Huangmen, little yellow gates, or Xiao Taijian little eunuchs. Your initial duties are menial, perhaps sweeping courtyards, carrying water, or running endless errands. But even at this lowest rung, you are acutely aware of the vast difference between your new life and the one you left behind. You have regular meals, clean clothes, and a roof over your head. This basic security, ironically, is a profound luxury. As you begin to understand the palace's inner workings, you realize that the eunuch system is a self-contained world, a parallel bureaucracy operating alongside the formal civil administration. There are eunuchs in charge of the imperial stables, eunuchs managing the imperial workshops that produce silk and porcelain, eunuchs overseeing the private treasures of the emperor, eunuchs responsible for the imperial archives, even eunuchs who acted as spies and intelligence gatherers. This vast network, run entirely by eunuchs, provided the emperor with a loyal and dedicated workforce, distinct from the scholarly officials who governed the outer empire. This unique structure led to a constant tension and power struggle between the eunuch establishment and the civil bureaucracy, a dynamic that would shape much of Imperial Chinese history. A fascinating yet horrifying aspect of this new life is the constant awareness of your own altered body. You are taught to manage the physical consequences of your castration, particularly the urinary issues that were a common affliction. You learn to control your bladder, to manage the discomfort, to hide any signs of leakage or odor. This constant vigilance adds another layer of mental strain to your already arduous existence. It is a daily, personal battle, a quiet struggle that no one else can truly understand. You learn to wear loose-fitting clothing, to move with a certain gait that minimizes discomfort. This physical reality is a constant, subtle reminder of your sacrifice, a private wound you carry everywhere. Another detail that might surprise you is the existence of eunuch schools and academies. While your initial learning might be practical, focusing on palace duties as you grow, opportunities for education may arise. Some eunuchs, particularly those with ambition and intelligence, were taught to read and write, to understand classical texts, and even to master calligraphy and painting. This wasn't altruism, it was pragmatic. A literate eunuch could serve in higher capacities, managing accounts, drafting documents, or even acting as imperial secretaries. This access to education, often denied to the vast majority of the population, was a unique privilege of the eunuch system, allowing some to transcend their humble origins and achieve considerable intellectual prowess. However, historians still debate whether this intellectual development among eunuchs was truly a path to personal fulfillment, or merely another tool for the imperial system to exploit their abilities. You quickly learn the language of the palace, a subtle dialect of gestures, intonation, and unspoken cues. You learn to read faces, to discern moods, to anticipate the desires of your superiors. You become a master of observation, a silent shadow in the opulent halls. You understand that your advancement, your very survival, depends on your ability to serve, to be indispensable, and above all, to be loyal. Any hint of disloyalty, any misstep, could mean not just your own downfall, but the ruin of your entire family. The stakes are incredibly high, a constant, low-level hum of anxiety that underpins every moment of your waking life. You see older eunuchs, some with considerable power and wealth, others still relegated to menial tasks despite years of service. You begin to understand that the path to influence is long and fraught with peril. It's a game of patience, of strategic alliances, and of outmaneuvering rivals. The palace, beneath its veneer of serene order, is a viper's nest of intrigue, ambition, and deadly rivalries. And you, the young, newly minted eunuch, are just taking your first tentative steps into this beautiful, horrifying world. The initial shock of the Forbidden City, the overwhelming grandeur and rigid protocols, slowly begins to fade, replaced by the mundane, often monotonous rhythm of daily palace life. You are no longer just a wide-eyed boy. You are becoming a cog in the vast, intricate machinery of the imperial household. Your days are dictated by bells, gongs, and the subtle shifts in the court schedule. You learn to wake before dawn, in the chill, silent darkness of the eunuch quarters, a Spartan existence compared to the luxury you serve. Your mornings begin with the ritual of dressing, simple robes that mark your station, a stark contrast to the opulent silks of the imperial family. You then move into your assigned duties, which, at your humble level, are often tiresome and repetitive. Imagine sweeping vast courtyards until your arms ache, the fine dust settling on your skin, or polishing brass fixtures until they gleam like gold. You might spend hours carrying buckets of water, fetching charcoal for braziers, or attending to the needs of higher-ranking eunuchs, who in turn serve the imperial family. Every task, no matter how small, is performed with meticulous care, for any oversight could lead to reprimand, or worse, meals for the lower-ranking eunuchs are functional rather than luxurious. You eat simple, often bland, fare, rice, vegetables, perhaps a little salted fish or preserved meat. It's sustenance, nothing more. But for someone who once knew the pangs of hunger, it is a profound comfort. You learn to eat quickly, efficiently, often in silence, as befits your station. The eunuch dining halls are utilitarian spaces, far removed from the lavish feasts of the emperor, yet they represent a significant step up from the scarcity of your previous life. Throughout the day, you are under constant supervision, whether by older, more experienced eunuchs or by palace guards. You learn to be constantly aware of your surroundings, to keep your eyes downcast unless addressed directly, and to speak only when spoken to, and then in deferential tones. This enforced humility, This constant suppression of your own will is part of the deep conditioning that molds you into the perfect palace servant. You become adept at reading body language, at sensing shifts in mood, at anticipating desires before they are even voiced. This subtle mastery of social cues becomes essential for your survival and potential advancement. One of the most peculiar and pervasive aspects of palace life is the rigid hierarchy and the complex social etiquette that governs every interaction. Within the eunuch community itself, there are layers upon layers of seniority, rank, and influence. A eunuch who entered the palace 5 years before you holds an undeniable advantage, having navigated the treacherous waters for longer. Those who have served the emperor directly or held positions of authority within the various directorates command immense respect and often fear. You learn to identify these figures, to show them proper deference, and to seek their favor if you hope to rise. It's a delicate dance of power, patronage, and subtle manipulation. Beyond the formal ranks, there's an unspoken pecking order based on personal relationships and connections. A eunuch might gain influence not through an official title, but through a close relationship with an imperial concubine, or by being the trusted confidant of a powerful minister who frequents the palace. You see these informal networks at play every day, observing how favors are granted, how information flows, and how power is subtly wielded behind the scenes. This understanding becomes crucial as you begin to navigate the treacherous currents of court politics. A fascinating yet horrifying example of this pervasive etiquette is the concept of avoiding taboo words, or respecting the imperial name. You learn not only the emperor's given name, but also the names of past emperors, deceased imperial relatives, and even certain auspicious words, all of which are forbidden to be spoken aloud. To utter a taboo word, even accidentally, could be seen as an act of disrespect, or even treason, carrying severe consequences. This forced linguistic self-censorship is a constant mental burden, requiring you to carefully select your words, even in casual conversation, lest you inadvertently offend an unseen power. It's an example of the psychological control exerted by the imperial system, reaching even into the most mundane aspects of your daily life. Your training extends beyond mere physical labor. You might be taught specialized skills depending on your assigned department. If you're in the Directorate of Rites, you'd learn the intricate details of imperial ceremonies, from the precise placement of ritual objects to the exact sequence of prayers and offerings. If you're in the Directorate of the Imperial Kitchen, you'd be trained in the preparation of specific dishes, the handling of rare ingredients, and the meticulous process of tasting food for poison before it reaches the imperial table, a job that, while prestigious, carries inherent mortal risk. Every skill, no matter how specialized, is aimed at serving the emperor and maintaining the seamless operation of the palace. The evenings are often spent in the eunuch quarters, a time for quiet reflection, or for sharing hushed conversations with your peers. You might hear stories, passed down from older eunuchs, of previous dynasties, of past emperors, of grand intrigues and bloody purges. These narratives, often embellished and whispered in low tones, serve as both entertainment and cautionary tales. They teach you about the fickle nature of imperial favor, the sudden rise and fall of powerful figures, and the constant danger that lurks beneath the surface of palace life. You learn that even the most powerful eunuchs are ultimately subservient, their fates tied to the emperor's will. Sometimes you might witness an imperial procession, a dazzling spectacle of color and sound. The emperor, carried in an elaborate sedan chair, surrounded by guards and officials, passes by, a blur of yellow silk and majestic bearing. You, along with countless other eunuchs, line the path, bowing deeply, your eyes fixed on the ground. These fleeting glimpses of the Son of Heaven are rare moments, reinforcing the immense, almost divine, distance between your world and his. He is a distant, powerful figure, both revered and feared, whose every mood can ripple through the entire palace, affecting every single soul within its walls. The concept of time itself takes on a different meaning within the palace. Days bleed into weeks, weeks into months, marked only by the changing seasons and the recurring cycles of imperial rituals. Outside, the world might be undergoing great changes, wars, rebellions, floods, famines, but within the high walls of the Forbidden City, life continues with an almost timeless regularity. You become disconnected from the rhythms of ordinary life, your world shrinking to the confines of the palace, your existence defined solely by your service. One common historical fact, often oversimplified, is that all eunuchs were poor and uneducated. While many did come from impoverished backgrounds, and their initial duties were indeed menial, the imperial system often provided opportunities for education and advancement that were otherwise inaccessible to the general populace. Talented eunuchs could rise through the ranks, becoming highly literate, skilled administrators, and even influential advisors. This was not a benevolent gesture, but a practical one. A literate eunuch could manage imperial finances, write edicts, and even serve as personal secretaries to the emperor, making them far more valuable. This highlights a complex academic debate. Historians still debate whether the institutionalized education of eunuchs was a genuine pathway to social mobility or merely a more efficient method of control, molding them into more effective tools for imperial governance. It's a reminder that even within the most oppressive systems, individuals can find ways to carve out a niche, to acquire knowledge, and to exert influence, even if that influence is constrained by their unique, compromised position. You continue to exist, to serve, to observe. The daily grind becomes less a burden and more a way of life. You learn to find comfort in routine, a strange sense of security in the predictable cycles of the palace. And as you master the intricacies of your daily tasks, a subtle ambition begins to stir within you. You start to look beyond the immediate drudgery, to consider the possibilities, however remote, of rising in this strange, golden cage. The relentless cycle of your daily duties continues, a monotonous rhythm punctuated by moments of intense pressure and quiet observation. But as you navigate the labyrinthine corridors and opulent halls of the Forbidden City, you begin to perceive something far more insidious and captivating than mere routine: the intricate, often deadly, web of court politics. You are no longer just a servant, you are a silent spectator, and, increasingly, a minor participant in a grand, perpetual drama where the stakes are life, death, and unimaginable power. You learn that power in the palace isn't always overt. It's not just the emperor's decree, though that is absolute. It's in the whispered conversations in shaded courtyards, the subtle nod from a powerful concubine, the carefully orchestrated slight against a rival, or the strategic placement of a trusted servant. You see eunuchs, seemingly humble and unassuming, subtly influencing decisions that affect millions. They might be delivering messages, acting as intermediaries, or simply providing information to their patrons. Information, you quickly realize, is currency here, and eunuchs, with their unparalleled access to all corners of the palace, become masters of its collection and dissemination. Consider the role of the Directorate of Ceremonial, one of the most powerful eunuch departments. These eunuchs were not just responsible for imperial rituals. They often served as the emperor's personal secretaries, reading memorials from officials, drafting edicts, and even sometimes making initial recommendations. Imagine the immense power wielded by a eunuch who could subtly alter the wording of a decree, or choose which petitions reached the emperor's desk, and which were quietly set aside. This was a direct challenge to the authority of the civil bureaucracy, the scholar officials who governed the empire, leading to centuries of bitter rivalry and open conflict. This inherent tension between the inner court eunuchs and the outer court officials is a recurring theme in Chinese imperial history, a constant, low-burning fire that often erupted into destructive conflagrations. You learn the art of flattery, not the clumsy, obvious kind, but the subtle, almost imperceptible praise that resonates with your superiors. You learn to anticipate their moods, to offer a comforting word when they are troubled, to provide a distraction when they are bored. You watch how older eunuchs gain favor, not through grand gestures, but through consistent, quiet loyalty and an unwavering dedication to the comfort and convenience of their masters. You also witness the flip side, the sudden, brutal downfall of those who displease, a stark reminder of the precariousness of your position. A single misstep, a perceived insult, or even just being in the wrong place at the wrong time can lead to banishment, torture, or execution. One of the most insidious ways power is wielded by eunuchs is through their control over access to the emperor. No one, not even the highest-ranking civil official, could directly approach the Son of Heaven without a eunuch intermediary. This gave eunuchs immense leverage. They could delay petitions, filter information, or even outright block access for those they deemed undesirable or dangerous to their own interests. Imagine a scholar official having spent months preparing a crucial memorial on famine relief, only to have it vanish into the bureaucratic black hole created by a resentful eunuch. This gatekeeping function was a primary source of eunuch power and a constant source of frustration and resentment for the civil administration. You observe the subtle ways eunuchs form factions and alliances. They gather around powerful patrons, an ambitious empress, a favored concubine, or even a young prince. By serving these figures diligently, providing them with information, and carrying out their clandestine tasks, eunuchs could rise in influence alongside their patrons. These alliances were often fluid and treacherous, shifting with the political winds. A eunuch might serve one mistress one day, only to switch allegiance the next if her star began to wane. This constant maneuvering, this delicate balance of loyalty and self-preservation, is a masterclass in Machiavellian strategy. Consider the story of a eunuch like Li Lianying from the late Qing dynasty, who rose from humble origins to become one of the most powerful and feared figures in the court of Empress Dowager Tixi. He wasn't a brilliant scholar or a military strategist, but he was a master of anticipating Cixi's every whim, of providing comfort and companionship, and of managing her vast personal household with ruthless efficiency. He controlled access to her, filtered information, and became her trusted confidant, wielding immense power through his proximity to her. His career exemplifies how personal loyalty and psychological acuity, rather than formal administrative skill, were often the true keys to eunuch power. A particularly chilling aspect of this political game is the use of informal intelligence networks. Eunuchs, by virtue of their presence in every corner of the palace from the imperial kitchens to the private chambers of the concubines, had unparalleled access to gossip, secrets, and sensitive information. They would listen, observe, and piece together fragments of conversations, then discreetly report them to their patrons. This intelligence could be used to expose rivals, to preempt plots, or to curry favor by providing valuable insights into the hidden machinations of the court. You learn to listen carefully, to distinguish truth from rumor, and to understand the implications of every whispered word. This mastery of intelligence gathering made eunuchs indispensable to those seeking to navigate the treacherous political landscape. You learn that even gestures of kindness can be calculated. A powerful eunuch might show unexpected generosity to a lower-ranking servant, not out of pure benevolence, but to cultivate loyalty, to build a network of informants, or to project an image of magnanimity. Conversely, a seemingly minor slight could be a deliberate act of humiliation, a testing of boundaries, or a subtle message of power. Every interaction, every exchange, is imbued with layers of unspoken meaning, a complex dance of social signaling that you must master to survive. One widely held historical belief is that all eunuchs were inherently corrupt. While corruption certainly existed, and powerful eunuchs often amassed vast fortunes, it's an oversimplification. Many eunuchs were genuinely dedicated servants, fulfilling crucial administrative roles. However, the system itself, with its lack of formal oversight and the immense informal power concentrated in their hands, created fertile ground for abuse. Historians still debate whether eunuch corruption was an inevitable consequence of their unique position and the unchecked power it afforded them, or if it was more a reflection of the pervasive corruption present across all levels of the imperial bureaucracy. It's a nuanced discussion, reminding us that reality is rarely as simple as black and white. As you grow older, and perhaps gain a modicum of influence, you might be tasked with more sensitive duties. You might find yourself delivering secret messages, witnessing private audiences, or even participating in clandestine investigations. You learn to keep secrets, to remain impassive in the face of shocking revelations, and to maintain an outward demeanor of unwavering loyalty, even when your inner thoughts are churning with fear or calculated ambition. The palace shapes you, hardening you, teaching you to navigate a world where trust is a rare commodity and betrayal a constant threat. You are no longer just an observer, you are becoming an integral, albeit silent, player in the grand, terrifying game of imperial power. Your world has gradually narrowed, contracting to the gilded confines of the Forbidden City, You've mastered the endless routines, navigated the subtle hierarchies, and begun to understand the intricate dance of palace politics. Now, as you mature and perhaps gain a modicum of trust from your superiors, you find yourself increasingly closer to the very epicenter of this universe, the Emperor. You are becoming a silent observer, a shadow in the intimate, often cruel, world of the Son of Heaven. Imagine the sheer awe and perhaps terror of being in the direct presence of the Emperor. He is not merely a man, he is the Son of Heaven Tianzi, the intermediary between the celestial realm and the earthly one. His person is sacred, his word is law, and his moods can dictate the fates of millions. When he walks through the palace, the atmosphere shifts. Servants scurry. Guards stand even more rigidly at attention, and even high-ranking officials lower their gaze in deference. You learn to perform your duties with an almost reverential silence, ensuring your presence is felt only through your efficiency, never through an intrusion. Your duties might now involve serving in the Emperor's private chambers, his study, or even his bedchambers. This proximity grants you unparalleled access to his daily life, a privilege denied to almost everyone else in the empire, including most of his own family. You might be responsible for preparing his tea, arranging his writing brushes, lighting his incense, or assisting him with his robes. These seemingly mundane tasks carry immense weight. Every object you touch, every surface you clean, is part of the Emperor's personal space. Imbued with his sacred presence, you observe his habits, his preferences, his quirks. Does he prefer his tea brewed strong or light? Does he pace when he's troubled? What kind of scrolls does he favor reading? You learn to anticipate his unspoken needs, to pour his tea before he even signals, to fetch a specific book from his vast library without being asked. This predictive service is highly valued, a testament to your attentiveness and understanding of his personal rhythm. It's a skill cultivated through intense observation, a silent study of a man whose every whim has profound consequences. However, this intimacy is a double-edged sword. While it offers opportunities for influence and advancement, it also places you in a position of extreme vulnerability. The Emperor's favor is fickle. A slight misstep, a misinterpreted glance, or a momentary lapse in judgment can lead to immediate and severe punishment. You hear whispers of eunuchs who were flogged for spilling tea or banished for an ill-timed cough. The pressure is immense, a constant, low-level hum of anxiety that never truly dissipates. You exist in a state of perpetual readiness, always aware that your life hangs by a thread. One fascinating, often overlooked aspect of the Emperor's daily life that you would witness is his deep engagement with Confucian rituals and ceremonies. While he might seem aloof, a significant portion of his time was dedicated to performing elaborate rites, offerings to ancestors, and prayers for good harvests or military success. These weren't mere formalities. They were considered crucial for maintaining cosmic harmony and ensuring the prosperity of the empire. You might be involved in preparing the ceremonial altars, arranging the sacrificial offerings, or ensuring the correct musical instruments were played at the precise moment. This ritualistic aspect of imperial life underscores the emperor's dual role as both temporal ruler and spiritual leader. You witness moments of profound intimacy and raw emotion. You might see the emperor grieving the loss of a loved one, or celebrating a military victory with uncharacteristic exuberance. You are privy to his private conversations with his closest advisors, hearing sensitive discussions about state affairs, military campaigns, or the appointment of officials. This first-hand exposure to the machinery of governance is invaluable. It teaches you how decisions are made, how power struggles unfold, and how the destiny of the empire is shaped. While you cannot openly participate in these discussions, your understanding of them grows, making you an increasingly valuable, though silent, resource. A particularly chilling reality of serving the emperor is the constant threat of political intrigue and assassination attempts. The imperial court was a hotbed of factions, each vying for power. Rivals, both within the imperial family and among the civil bureaucracy, constantly sought to undermine the emperor or those close to him. You might be present during a moment of heightened tension, sensing the unspoken fear in the air, or even witness the aftermath of a failed plot. Your role would be to remain vigilant, to report anything suspicious, and to ensure the emperor's safety, even at the cost of your own life. Your proximity makes you a target, a potential pawn in larger, deadlier games. One common historical truth is that emperors often came to rely heavily on their eunuchs, viewing them as more trustworthy than civil officials or even family members. This reliance stemmed from the eunuch's unique position. They had no family to establish a rival dynasty, no children to pass on their power to, and their entire existence was dependent on the emperor's favor. This made them, theoretically, more loyal. However, this loyalty could also be a facade, masking deep personal ambitions. Historians still debate whether emperors' reliance on eunuchs truly stemmed from a belief in their inherent loyalty due to their castration, or if it was a strategic choice to counterbalance the power of the scholar-official bureaucracy. This dynamic often led to eunuchs accumulating immense power, sometimes overshadowing even the emperor himself. Particularly during the reigns of weak or young emperors, you might become involved in the emperor's personal affairs, acting as a confidant, a messenger, or even a go-between in his relationships with his empresses and concubines. You learn about his preferences, his disappointments, his joys. This intimate knowledge grants you a unique, though delicate, form of influence. You can subtly steer conversations, gently suggest a course of action, or subtly convey messages that others cannot. This is not open power, but the subtle, pervasive influence of a trusted shadow. Imagine the loneliness of the emperor, isolated by his divine status and surrounded by sycophants and schemers. It is often the eunuchs, those who have sacrificed their very essence to serve him, who become his closest companions, the only ones with whom he can speak freely, without fear of political machination. You might find yourself listening to his anxieties, his frustrations, his private thoughts on the burdens of leadership. This unique bond forged in the crucible of absolute power is one of the most paradoxical relationships in imperial history. It's a bond of dependency, vulnerability, and often profound unspoken understanding. As you spend more time in the emperor's immediate presence, you absorb the atmosphere of absolute authority. You learn the unspoken rules of the court, the subtle ways to navigate its treacherous currents. You become a master of discretion, a keeper of secrets, and a silent witness to the triumphs and tragedies of the Son of Heaven. Your world is small, but it is at the very heart of an empire. You've become a fixture in the emperor's inner sanctum, a silent, ever-present shadow. But the Forbidden City isn't just about one man. Beyond the emperor's gilded chambers lies another world, equally opulent and even more treacherous, the private domain of the empresses, consorts, and concubines. As a eunuch, you are one of the few men, if not the only true man, allowed to move freely within these sacred, heavily guarded spaces, making you an indispensable, yet often vulnerable player in their intricate lives. Imagine the inner court, a series of grand palaces and secluded courtyards, each home to a different imperial woman. The empress, the official wife and mother of the nation, resides in her own magnificent palace, a symbol of imperial legitimacy and female power. Around her are the concubines, ranked according to their favor and their ability to bear male heirs. They live in their own luxurious yet isolated quarters, surrounded by their own retinues of eunuchs and serving maids. This is a world defined by beauty, luxury, boredom, and fierce competition. Your duties might now extend to serving these imperial women. You could be assigned to a particular concubine, responsible for her daily needs, managing her household, and running her errands. You might find yourself dressing her in exquisite silks, preparing her cosmetic powders, or simply waiting patiently as she performs her elaborate daily toilette. These women, confined within the palace walls, rely heavily on their eunuchs for everything, from the most mundane tasks to the most sensitive communications. You witness their lives firsthand. You see the empress, burdened by her ceremonial duties, often distant and regal, but perhaps also isolated by her lofty position. You see the favored concubines, basking in the emperor's attention, adorned with jewels and surrounded by luxuries. But you also see the forgotten ones, those who have lost favor, their courtyards silent, their faces etched with loneliness and despair. Their beauty, their youth, their entire existence is solely for the emperor's pleasure, and without his attention, they fade into obscurity, their lives a slow, gilded torment. One of the most striking aspects of life for these women is the intense rivalry for the emperor's attention and for producing a male heir. This competition wasn't just about personal affection, it was about power, status, and the future of their families. A concubine who bore a son, especially a crown prince, could elevate her entire clan, bringing them wealth, titles, and influence. Conversely, a concubine who failed to produce an heir, or whose child died young, might quickly fall from favor, losing her luxuries and even her position. You become an unwilling spectator, and sometimes a pawn, in this high-stakes game. Imagine the tension when a new concubine arrives, perhaps younger, more beautiful, threatening the established order. You might see the subtle acts of sabotage, a whispered rumor, a doctored letter, or even a deliberate delay in delivering a message from the emperor. Eunuchs are often involved in these machinations, either willingly or unwillingly. You might be asked to spy on a rival, to deliver a coded message, or to discreetly convey a bribe. Your loyalty is constantly tested, and choosing the wrong side can have deadly consequences. A common historical fact is that eunuchs were often involved in the education and upbringing of young princes and princesses. You might find yourself tending to the needs of a royal child, watching them grow, playing with them, and even imparting early lessons. This often fostered deep bonds between eunuchs and their imperial charges. For a eunuch, this was not just a duty, it was an investment. A prince you helped raise might one day become emperor, and your loyalty and service could be richly rewarded. This unique relationship could be incredibly powerful, sometimes leading to eunuchs becoming surrogate fathers or trusted mentors. However, even this relationship carried immense risk. If a prince you served fell from favor or was implicated in a plot, you too could be swept away in the ensuing purge. You learn to walk a careful line, balancing genuine affection with an unwavering awareness of political realities. It's a delicate dance between genuine care and ruthless self-preservation. This aspect of palace life often gets overlooked in popular accounts, but it highlights the profound emotional complexities involved. The lives of these imperial women are often cloaked in mystery and romanticized notions. But as a eunuch, you see the reality, the constant surveillance, the enforced idleness, the pervasive loneliness, and the underlying anxiety about their future. They are prisoners of luxury, their every movement scrutinized, their every desire subject to imperial approval. Their world is one of silk and jade, but also of gilded cages. A lesser-known detail is the role eunuchs played in managing the private finances and vast personal treasuries of empresses and concubines. These women, particularly the empress, could amass considerable wealth through dowries, gifts, and allowances. Eunuchs were tasked with overseeing these fortunes, managing their investments, and handling their personal expenditures. This gave some eunuchs immense power, not just over the daily lives of the women, but over substantial financial resources which they could leverage for their own gain or for their patrons' political advantage. This financial control was another significant source of their influence and often a flashpoint for conflict with the civil bureaucracy. Historians still debate whether the strict segregation and elaborate rituals surrounding the imperial women were primarily for their protection and elevation, or if they served more as a means of control, isolating them and limiting their potential for political interference. It's a question that reflects the patriarchal nature of imperial society, where even the most powerful women were ultimately confined, and their influence often mediated through others, like eunuchs. You continue to serve, watching the power plays unfold, the silent battles fought with whispers and subtle manipulations. You see empresses rise and fall, concubines gain and lose favor, their destinies irrevocably tied to the emperor's whims and the ruthless competition within the inner court. Your role, though often unnoticed, is crucial. You are the eyes and ears, the hands and feet of these imperial women, and through your service, you become a vital, albeit unacknowledged, participant in their endless struggle for survival and influence. You have ascended, step by laborious step, through the intricate hierarchy of the Forbidden City. You hold a position of proximity to power, perhaps even wielding a degree of influence yourself. Yet, despite the silks you now wear, the fine food you eat, and the knowledge you possess, you are never truly free. The shadow of your castration, the indelible mark of your forced subservience, looms large. Even with immense privilege, The life of a eunuch in Imperial China is fraught with constant threats and the ever-present specter of imperial disfavor. Imagine the gnawing anxiety that accompanies every promotion, every new responsibility. The higher you rise, the more eyes are upon you, and the more rivals you acquire. Your newfound wealth and influence, while outwardly desirable, make you a target. Other eunuchs, jealous of your ascent, might seek to undermine you. Civil officials, wary of eunuch power, might lay traps or spread rumors. Even members of the imperial family, desperate to consolidate their own power, might view you as a threat or a useful pawn to be exploited and then discarded. You learn to trust no one implicitly, to constantly scan for subtle signs of betrayal, and to guard your words with extreme care. One of the most terrifying threats comes from within the eunuch ranks themselves. The system was designed to foster internal competition, ensuring that eunuchs remained divided and loyal only to the emperor. This often led to vicious infighting and denunciations. A rival eunuch might fabricate accusations, bribe lower-ranking servants to testify against you, or even orchestrate a discovery of incriminating evidence in your quarters. These internal purges were brutal, often ending in torture, imprisonment, or even execution. You quickly learn that protecting your own reputation and cultivating a network of loyal subordinates is paramount to survival. Then there is the omnipresent danger of the emperor's fickle will. Remember, you are a servant, your entire existence contingent on his favor. A single bad mood, a misconstrued comment, or simply the emperor waking up on the wrong side of his dragon-embroidered bed could spell your doom. He is a living god, and his judgment is absolute. You hear stories, whispered in hushed tones, of powerful eunuchs who, after decades of loyal service, were suddenly stripped of their titles, their wealth confiscated, and their lives ended on a whim. The phrase accompanying the tiger, Banjun Ruban Hu, perfectly encapsulates this perilous existence. Serving an emperor is like accompanying a tiger. One wrong move and you're devoured. Consider the infamous case of Wang Zhen, a powerful eunuch from the Ming dynasty. He rose to unprecedented power under Emperor Yingzong, virtually ruling the empire himself. Yet, his arrogance and misjudgment ultimately led to the disastrous Tumu crisis, where the emperor was captured by Mongolian forces. Though Wang Zhen was killed during the chaos, his downfall serves as a stark reminder that even the most influential eunuchs were ultimately expendable, their fortunes tied to the imperial families. This illustrates a common historical truth. Eunuch power, while vast, was inherently unstable and largely dependent on a weak or impressionable emperor. Beyond the internal power struggles, you face the constant antagonism of the scholar officials Wenguan, the backbone of the traditional bureaucracy. These officials viewed eunuchs with disdain and suspicion, seeing them as uneducated interlopers who corrupted the purity of the imperial administration. They saw themselves as the rightful guardians of Confucian morality and good governance, while eunuchs, by their very nature, were perceived as morally compromised and driven by base desires. This ideological conflict often manifested in bitter political struggles, with officials constantly petitioning the emperor to curb eunuch power, and eunuchs, in turn, seeking to undermine officials who challenge them. You're caught in the middle of this centuries-old feud, a target for both sides. A curious, yet tragic aspect of this life is the psychological toll it takes. The constant vigilance, the suppression of genuine emotion, the pervasive fear all contribute to a deep sense of isolation and paranoia. You learn to wear a mask, to project an image of unwavering composure, even as your mind races with anxieties. Some eunuchs developed deep resentments, manifesting as cruelty towards their subordinates. Others sought solace in lavish spending, accumulating vast fortunes in a desperate attempt to compensate for their inner emptiness. The human cost of this privileged yet dehumanizing existence is immense. One lesser-known detail about the precariousness of their position is the practice of eunuchs being registered with their home districts. While they lived in the palace, their official ties to their birthplace were maintained, theoretically allowing them to return home upon retirement, usually in their later years. However, this was often a facade. If a eunuch fell from imperial favor, his entire family in his home district could be implicated, their properties confiscated, and they themselves punished or even executed. This familial vulnerability meant that a eunuch's missteps had far-reaching consequences beyond the palace walls. Adding another layer of pressure and fear to their lives, it ensures that their loyalty, at least in theory, remains unwavering. Historians still debate whether the severe punishments meted out to eunuchs who fell from favor were primarily for maintaining discipline and deterring corruption, or if they were a deliberate strategy by emperors to prevent eunuchs from accumulating too much independent power and challenging imperial authority. The sheer brutality of these punishments often served as a chilling deterrent for any who might consider betraying the imperial trust. Even the most powerful eunuchs lived with the understanding that their status was precarious, fleeting. A new emperor ascending to the throne might decide to purge the eunuchs who served his predecessor, seeing them as remnants of an old regime or potential threats to his own rule. You might witness these purges, the swift, merciless elimination of those you once admired or feared, a stark reminder that even at the pinnacle of eunuch power, true security remains an elusive dream. Your life, no matter how influential, is ultimately not your own. It belongs to the emperor, and he can reclaim it at any moment. The tranquil, seemingly immutable facade of the Forbidden City often belied a simmering cauldron of unrest. While your daily life as a eunuch might have been one of regimented order, you would inevitably bear witness to, and perhaps even become entangled in, the palace's moments of rebellion and intrigue. These were the periods when the gilded cage became a battlefield, when whispered plots turned into bloody coups, and when your very survival depended on a keen understanding of the shifting loyalties and deadly games being played at the highest levels. Imagine the sudden, electrifying shift in atmosphere when news of an uprising reaches the palace. Perhaps it's a peasant rebellion in the provinces, fueled by famine and discontent, threatening the very foundations of the dynasty. Or perhaps it's a more localized crisis, a power struggle between rival factions within the court itself, threatening to spill into open conflict. The hushed whispers turn into anxious murmurs, the meticulous routines are disrupted, and an undercurrent of fear permeates every hall and courtyard. You learn to read the faces of the senior eunuchs, the imperial guards, and even the emperor himself, searching for clues about the severity of the crisis. Your role during such times would become even more critical and dangerous. You might be tasked with securing vital documents, delivering urgent messages between the emperor and his generals, or even guarding specific sections of the palace. The palace, usually a place of ritualized peace, transforms into a fortress, its gates heavily guarded, its corridors patrolled by armed soldiers. You are no longer just a servant. You are a de facto soldier in a war that unfolds silently, behind closed doors, or erupts with terrifying suddenness. One of the most common forms of rebellion within the palace came from ambitious princes, disgruntled imperial relatives, or powerful officials seeking to depose the reigning emperor or influence the succession. These plots often involved eunuchs as key intermediaries. You might be approached by a conspiring prince, offered promises of immense wealth and power if you betray your current master and support his claim. This places you in an impossible dilemma: betray and risk exposure and a gruesome death, or refuse and risk the wrath of a future emperor if the plot succeeds. Your choice, if you even have one, is a matter of life and death, not just for you, but for your entire family outside the palace walls. Consider the turbulent history of the Tang dynasty, where eunuchs famously wielded immense power, at times even deposing and enthroning emperors at will. They controlled the imperial guards, managed intelligence networks, and became deeply entrenched in political succession. Imagine being a eunuch during such a period one day. You serve an emperor, meticulously attending to his needs. The next, a powerful eunuch faction, perhaps dissatisfied with his rule or supporting a rival, might march into his chambers, force his abdication, or even assassinate him. Your loyalty then shifts not to the emperor himself, but to the most powerful faction, the one most likely to emerge victorious. This constant, brutal recalculation of loyalty is a hallmark of your existence during times of turmoil. A less commonly discussed form of intrigue involved the manipulation of information during succession crises. When an emperor was on his deathbed, the struggle for power became most acute. Different factions, empresses, concubines, princes, and their supporting eunuchs and officials would vie to control access to the dying monarch and influence the drafting of his last will and testament. As a eunuch attending the emperor, You might be privy to these desperate machinations, perhaps even tasked with delivering a falsified decree or concealing the true intentions of the dying ruler. Your silence, your complicity, becomes a crucial factor in determining the next emperor. The sheer brutality of these power struggles is often shocking. Traitors, once exposed, faced unimaginable torture and execution. Their families, even distant relatives, could be implicated and wiped out. You would witness these purges, the swift, merciless sweep of imperial justice, a chilling display meant to deter any future defiance. These spectacles of punishment served as a stark reminder of the ultimate price of failure in the cutthroat world of palace politics. One common historical interpretation is that eunuchs were simply corrupt puppets of various factions, while some were, a more nuanced view acknowledges that their involvement in rebellions and intrigues often stemmed from a desperate need for self-preservation in a volatile environment. Historians still debate whether eunuchs initiated many of the major palace intrigues and rebellions, or if they were largely exploited by imperial factions and civil officials, acting as tools rather than masterminds. This academic discussion highlights the complex agency of eunuchs, who were both victims and perpetrators in the deadly games of power. You learn to be cunning, to predict the shifting tides of power, and to align yourself with the winning side, or at least to avoid being on the losing one. This might involve subtly providing information to a rising star, feigning ignorance when questioned about a conspiracy, or even actively participating in minor acts of sabotage against a rival faction. Your survival depends on your ability to read the signs, to understand the subtle signals of a coup in the making, and to adapt your loyalties with ruthless pragmatism. Even when you are not directly involved in a plot, the atmosphere of suspicion and paranoia is pervasive. Every glance, every casual conversation, every gathering of eunuchs or officials could be seen as a sign of conspiracy. You learn to keep your head down, to perform your duties diligently, and to avoid drawing unnecessary attention to yourself. The palace at these times feels like a pressure cooker, ready to explode at any moment. Your life, already defined by sacrifice, now also hangs in the balance of the empire's grand, often violent, political theater. The tumultuous periods of rebellion and intrigue eventually recede, leaving behind a new, albeit fragile, equilibrium. You, the surviving eunuch, continue your existence within the Forbidden City, but as dynasties rise and fall, as emperors come and go, your unique position, while retaining its core function, undergoes subtle yet significant transformations. The fading echoes of past glories and the emergence of new imperial orders constantly reshape the world you inhabit. Imagine witnessing the end of a dynasty. Perhaps the previous ruling family, weakened by internal strife or external invasions, finally collapses. The atmosphere in the palace would be one of profound uncertainty, fear, and even chaos. Imperial family members might flee, loyal officials might commit suicide, and the once impregnable walls could be breached by conquering armies or rebellious peasants. As a eunuch, your fate would hang precariously in the balance. Would the new conquerors spare you? Would they integrate you into their own nascent imperial system? Or would they see you as relics of a fallen regime, ripe for extermination? Historically, the transition between dynasties was often a brutal affair for eunuchs. Some new dynasties, particularly those founded by military strongmen, viewed eunuchs with deep suspicion, often carrying out widespread purges to eliminate their influence. The early Ming dynasty, for instance, initially imposed strict restrictions on eunuchs, fearing a repeat of the eunuch excesses of the late Tang. Yet, even then, the practical necessities of managing a vast imperial household inevitably led to their re-empowerment. This pattern, eunuchs being suppressed at the start of a dynasty, only to rise again, is a recurring echo throughout Chinese history. As a eunuch, you would witness the physical changes that accompany a new reign. Palaces might be renovated, new architectural styles introduced, and the emphasis on certain rituals might shift. The grand ceremonies you once performed with one emperor might be altered or entirely abandoned by his successor. You learn to adapt quickly, to master new protocols, and to understand the specific preferences of the new Son of Heaven. Your survival depends on your flexibility, your ability to shed old allegiances and cultivate new ones with remarkable speed. Beyond the dynastic changes, you observe the gradual evolution of your own role. In earlier dynasties, eunuchs might have primarily been household servants, But as empires grew larger and more complex, their administrative functions expanded exponentially. You might see eunuchs moving from managing the imperial wardrobe to overseeing vast state monopolies, directing intelligence agencies, or even commanding armies. This slow creep of power, often due to the laziness or incompetence of civil officials, or simply the emperor's desire for a more loyal personal bureaucracy, is a constant thread. A fascinating yet often disturbing aspect of these shifts is the way eunuchs themselves adapted and even innovated. They developed sophisticated financial networks, created vast personal estates, and established powerful informal alliances with powerful families or even secret societies. They became adept at navigating the ever-changing political landscape, finding new ways to accumulate wealth and influence, even when formal prohibitions were in place. This demonstrates their resilience and their capacity for adaptation. Even in the face of intense societal and political pressure, one common historical oversimplification is that eunuch power reached its zenith and then simply disappeared. In reality, their influence waxed and waned with each dynasty, often peaking during periods of weak imperial rule and receding during stronger reigns. For example, while the Ming dynasty saw some of the most powerful eunuchs in history, the subsequent Qing dynasty, the last imperial dynasty, largely managed to keep eunuch power in check, though they were still indispensable for the daily running of the palace. You, as a long-serving eunuch, would live through these fluctuations, experiencing periods of immense influence followed by periods of relative subservience. You might witness changes in the very purpose and perception of eunuchs. In some eras, they might be reviled and feared, depicted in official histories as corrupting forces. In others, particularly when their influence was curbed, they might be seen as loyal, if pitiable, servants. These shifting narratives, though largely determined by the scholar officials who wrote the official histories, still impact your daily life, influencing how you are treated by others and how you view yourself. A particularly poignant detail is the practice of eunuchs adopting sons and sometimes even daughters, lacking biological heirs. Many eunuchs, especially those who accumulated wealth, would adopt boys often from their own impoverished families to carry on their family name, provide care in old age, and perform ancestral rites after their death. These adopted sons were often treated with genuine affection, becoming the emotional anchors in lives otherwise devoid of traditional family bonds. This practice highlights a powerful human need for connection and legacy, even in the face of physical alteration. It's a detail that complicates the often singular narrative of eunuchs as purely power-hungry figures. Historians still debate whether the adoption practices of eunuchs were primarily a means to secure social and financial security in their old age, or if they represented a genuine attempt to fulfill traditional familial roles within the constraints of their unique status. This complex human element reminds us that even within the most rigid systems, individuals find ways to adapt and forge meaning. As the centuries pass, you, in spirit, witness the slow, inexorable march of time. The grandeur of the Forbidden City remains, but the faces change, the political currents shift, and the external world presses ever more urgently against its ancient walls. Your world, once seemingly eternal, begins to show cracks, hints of the profound changes that will ultimately sweep away the imperial system entirely. But for now, you remain, a silent, enduring witness to the fading echoes of a glorious and often brutal past. You have journeyed with us through the chilling realities of a palace eunuch's life in Imperial China, from the agonizing sacrifice of youth to the gilded confines of the Forbidden City, through the intricate dance of court politics and the ever-present specter of imperial disfavor. You've seen the relentless daily grind, the fierce rivalries of imperial women, and the terrifying upheavals of dynastic change. Now, as our story draws to a close, we reflect on the legacy of sacrifice, the profound and often paradoxical impact these men had on one of the world's longest-lasting empires. Their untold stories now brought to light. Imagine standing at the end of such a life, looking back. What remains perhaps a vast fortune, accumulated through decades of careful management and shrewd political maneuvering? Perhaps immense power, wielded in the emperor's shadow, influencing decisions that shaped the destiny of millions. Or perhaps simply The quiet satisfaction of having survived, of having navigated a treacherous world against impossible odds. For many eunuchs, their sacrifice was not in vain. It bought their families out of poverty, securing their lineage for generations. This economic and social uplift for their kin was often the primary motivation, a driving force that justified the profound personal cost. The legacy of eunuchs in Imperial China is undeniably complex and often contradictory. On one hand, they were indispensable. They ran the vast imperial household, managed the emperor's personal finances, oversaw construction projects, collected intelligence, and even led military campaigns. Without them, the sheer logistical demands of governing such a vast empire, especially from within the cloistered walls of the Forbidden City, would have been impossible. They provided a loyal, dedicated, and often highly efficient administrative force, separate from the civil bureaucracy, giving emperors a direct line of control and information. They were the emperor's eyes, ears, and hands within the most private and sensitive domains. However, on the other hand, their power was often viewed with deep suspicion and resentment. Official histories, largely written by Confucian scholar officials, frequently portrayed eunuchs as corrupt, venal, and power-hungry, responsible for weakening dynasties and leading emperors astray. These narratives often painted them as the antithesis of the virtuous, educated scholar, emphasizing their physical mutilation as a symbol of their moral corruption. This historical bias has long obscured the full complexity of their roles and motivations, reducing them to mere villains in the grand narrative of Chinese history. A powerful historical truth is that eunuchs, despite their formal lack of masculinity, often embodied extreme forms of ambition and ruthlessness. This wasn't necessarily inherent to them, but a product of the brutal system they inhabited. To survive and thrive, they had to be cunning, strategic, and often merciless. They had no natural heirs, no familial power base outside the court, meaning their entire existence and legacy were tied to the imperial system. This created a unique form of loyalty to the emperor, or, more accurately, to the imperial institution, but also a fierce drive for personal power, as that was their only means of security and self-worth. Think of figures like Zheng He, the legendary Ming Dynasty admiral. He was a eunuch, yet he commanded massive fleets on ambitious voyages of exploration, reaching as far as East Africa. His achievements were monumental, showcasing the immense capabilities that some eunuchs possessed, far beyond mere domestic service. He embodies the paradox: a castrated man, yet a grand explorer, a testament to the fact that talent and ambition could flourish even within the constraints of the eunuch system. This challenges the common stereotype of eunuchs as solely corrupt palace schemers. A more poignant, lesser-known aspect of their legacy is the profound personal sacrifice that went beyond the physical. These men were cut off from fundamental human experiences, marriage, fatherhood, the continuity of a biological lineage. They often found solace and identity within the eunuch community itself, forming surrogate families and brotherhoods. Their wealth, while accumulated, could never truly compensate for the innate human desire for wholeness and continuation through offspring. Their lives, even at their most powerful, remained forever marked by this unfillable void. Historians still debate whether the institutionalized use of eunuchs ultimately strengthened the imperial system by providing a dedicated and often efficient bureaucracy, or if it inherently weakened it by fostering internal power struggles and corruption that contributed to dynastic decline. This ongoing academic discussion highlights the dual nature of their impact, reminding us that their role was neither entirely beneficial nor entirely detrimental, but deeply interwoven with the fabric of imperial governance. Their stories, once relegated to the shadowy footnotes of history, are now being re-examined, revealing a more nuanced picture. We see individuals who were not just victims or villains, but complex human beings who made difficult choices, suffered unimaginable pain, and often achieved remarkable feats within a system that sought to dehumanize them. Their lives were a testament to resilience, ambition, and the enduring human spirit to find meaning and purpose. Even in the most horrifying circumstances, the Forbidden City stands today, a monument to a bygone era. Its red walls and golden roofs echo with the unseen footsteps of countless eunuchs, men who sacrificed their bodies, and often their souls, to serve an empire. Their legacy is etched into the very foundations of Chinese history, a reminder of the raw realities of power, the harshness of survival, and the enduring human cost of a unique and horrifying institution. As the final echoes of our story fade, let's allow the images of the Forbidden City, grand and imposing, to gently recede into the quiet corners of your mind. Imagine the soft rustle of ancient silks, the subtle gleam of moonlight on polished marble, and the distant, almost ethereal chime of a palace bell carried on a whisper of wind. Feel the gentle hum of the night, a calming presence after our journey through such complex and often harrowing histories. Allow yourself to drift, to let the intricate details of eunuch life melt away, leaving only a sense of profound historical resonance. The struggles, the ambitions, the quiet sacrifices, they all become part of the tapestry of time, settling softly into the past. Breathe deeply, letting go of any lingering shadows, and embrace the tranquil stillness that now surrounds you. The ancient world sleeps, and so too can you.